This video is sponsored by NordVPN. I honestly think these two phones proved that something needs to change in the industry. The Galaxy S25 Ultra and iPhone 17 Pro Max are good phones in a vacuum, maybe even great. But where these two beasts once ruled the market, there are other brands matching and even surpassing them in actually critical areas. And these two are in danger of being left behind, so I want to talk about that. Hey guys, I'm Ryan Thomas, and these two are the very best phones that their respective brands make. The definition of flagship products. This means they cost an eye-watering amount of money, $1,200 for the iPhone, $1,300 for the Galaxy, and that means that they should be head and shoulders above the rest, above the competition, above more affordable devices. And well, I just don't think that is the absolute case right now. Their competitors in Google and OnePlus are killing it, and if we go further afield to Xiaomi, Honor and Vivo, well, these two barely stand a chance. More on that after a quick word from today's sponsor. One of the most convenient and handy inventions of the last few years is certainly a VPN, and that's where this video's sponsor NordVPN comes in. Not only does this service help you browse anonymously, tunneling your network traffic through another region which helps secure your connection, but it's also just really handy for watching programs, movies and sports that you just wouldn't get in your home version of Netflix, for example. Or if, like me, you're a diehard Premier League fanatic and you go on holiday, being able to log into your streaming services just as you normally would without a fuss is brilliant, and NordVPN allows you to do that. It works on Mac, Windows, iOS and our beloved Android. It's easy to install and get set up. If you go to nordvpn.com/androidpolice, you'll get up to 77% off a 2-year plan and 4 months extra for free. So check that link out in the video description, and a big thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring today's content. Why do you buy a big phone? Partially for the large display, and though Samsung has generally dominated this area for many years now, the iPhone actually comfortably comes out on top in my testing. I do prefer the Galaxy's squarer corners and smaller punch hole. I think maybe you guys might as well, but actually the iPhone's panel gets brighter across HDR and SDR, and the bezels are significantly smaller as well. For me, it's just a cut above what Samsung is doing with its panel right now, even when you have the extra brightness enabled on the latter. I'm sure given the stature of these two very expensive smartphones, you're probably thinking, how good are they at gaming and other high-end tasks? And in this regard, it is actually really hard to pick between them, because the Snapdragon 8 Elite of the Samsung and the Apple A19 Pro of the iPhone are two of the fastest chips around, actually considerably more capable than the Pixel's Tensor, and one of the few areas where actually you would really want to go with these two over the Google phone. This old school raw horsepower approach to high-level smartphones is where these two industry vets really do comfortably sit in the lead. And the same goes for battery life. They're big, they're heavy, the iPhone noticeably more hefty than the Galaxy, but both phones are designed for power users, people who are going to use their phones all the time, and the type of people that live on their phones, if anything. And there are big batteries here to really help things out. If you have the eSIM version of the iPhone 17 Pro Max, you will get a slightly bigger battery than the Galaxy. And if you have the normal SIM SKU, like the one I have here in the UK, that means that you're going to get a slightly smaller battery than what's in the Galaxy. But even then, my iPhone lasts longer than my Galaxy Ultra, despite the small difference in battery size. Both are all day, if not 2-day phones for me as a lighter user, but where the iPhone came into its own for me is it really seemed to stretch out that smaller cell to get me to the end of the second day much more comfortably than the Samsung did. Now, neither charging setups are going to completely blow you away. They're still significantly slower than anything coming out of China right now, and they're sort of a top-up overnight scenario. These take closer to a full hour to go from 0 to 100 as opposed to the half hour that you might get out of a OnePlus or an Oppo. You're going to have to tell me in the comments which of these two designs you actually prefer, because I do think it's quite divisive. But I also think that part of the reason why things need to change in this industry, part of the reason I've come up with that title, is that Apple and Google both feel like they're being complacent. The Galaxy Ultra hasn't drastically changed in like 4 years, and the iPhone Max has, which is great and all that, but now with a much more easily damageable outer shell and a lackluster button shoved on the side. Where other companies are keeping their phones looking and feeling fresh, these two are sort of, well, like twiddling their thumbs or half-assing design refreshes. A phone that cost $1,200 should not scratch this easily. That is absurd, and for that reason alone, I would have to give the build section to the Galaxy. And whilst Apple and Samsung have for sure taken AI into consideration, in Samsung's case maybe baking it a little more into the deep OS experience as opposed to Apple, which feels like it's kind of just tacked on the side. If you've ever used a recent Pixel, I'm talking the last couple of generations, these two phones just feel like they're from the Stone Age. Like their AI chops just are not there, or at least not implemented in a way that makes you really want to use them and really feel like it's part of the cohesive design language. Though of the two, I do think Samsung has the more comprehensive AI package if you're into artificial intelligence. I could personally live without AI, but Apple and Samsung are playing catch up to Google here, and it's obvious. Thankfully, both phones get lots of software updates, so will take you into the next decade. Should keep you going for a long time, thumbs up for that. Samsung for me just has the more cohesive experience, especially when you chuck in the S Pen, which of course is that stylus that's built in, really handy for some people. I also know people who buy Galaxy Ultras every year who never use the built-in stylus, so it's going to depend on what your personal preferences are. And iOS has fallen from grace in the last 5 or so years. You know, it doesn't have that polish or that allure that Apple had in the mid-2010s. These days, I think Android is by far the better option, and Samsung's One UI is maybe one of the best versions of Android. So it pulls ahead in software for me. The camera situation is a mixed bag. A lot of what I'll show you in the comparison samples here is going to come down to which kind of color profiles that you prefer on a personal level. Both offer a version of color profiles that will let you adjust the tones to fit your taste, but out of the box I do think I prefer the Galaxy ever so slightly. Both of these 1x cameras are basically the same cameras that have been in the last few generations of phones. They really haven't evolved much, but that's not limited to just them. Google is also doing this. And I'd also argue that these 1x cameras are probably as similar across different makes and models as they ever have been. We're not paying 4 figures for just one camera though, so let's switch to the others. The ultra-wides and telephotos are where things divide a little bit more. I prefer the way that Samsung does its pinched out shots. In general, with these extra cameras, if you want to call them that, Apple and Samsung have taken very different approaches in like micro contrast and sharpness, not to be confused with detail. Samsung, particularly when you zoom in, likes to crank the ever-living nuts off of the digital sharpening slider, where Apple goes the opposite approach and keeps things looking a lot softer, a lot noisier, but also kind of a lot more natural and less processed looking. I don't think there's necessarily a right way or a wrong way to do this. Again, it's going to come down to your personal preference. But since the iPhone caps out at 40x zoom, the Samsung lets you crank it all the way up to 100x, I just have to give that to the Galaxy. And whilst both selfie shooters are very good setups, it is hard to argue against Apple's innovative reorientable square shooter. It might not be a ridiculously high quality setup compared to last year, it's roughly the same quality as the 16 Pro Max in my opinion. For its versatility, you really cannot beat it. And in the video, again, it's kind of confusing. So the Galaxy shoots the better automatic video in my opinion, like the normal thing that when you load up the camera, you will just hit record. In particular, its stabilization is fantastic, and it can also shoot up to 8K 30 and log professional video if you go into the right menus. The iPhone shoots ProRes Log and ProRes RAW codecs, which for professionals and people who are going to actively grade the footage after are the absolute pinnacle of what mobile videography has become. Though some modes also require that you buy an expensive external storage drive, so it's kind of hard to call which of these is overall better. Probably have to give it to the Galaxy because it is more accessible, and I think the general consumer is going to appreciate those features and modes more than the stuff that is basically dedicated to professionals, which is going to make up a very small percentage of the people who are buying these phones. Neither of these cameras have the crazy AI super zoom chops that Google offers, neither have mind-bending sensors and lenses like what we see coming out of China at the moment, and I don't currently feel like either are majorly innovating on the last couple of years. But with that said, I'd probably call the Galaxy the better all-round package if you're a mobile shutterbug. I mean, the 4x lens on the iPhone, it really is quite underwhelming, to be honest. In a vacuum, on their own, these phones are fantastic, and I'm sure there will be people in the comments of this video right up to this point saying, I own a Galaxy or an iPhone, and I have absolutely zero problems with it. It's phenomenal. And that's something I love to hear, because you being happy about your smartphone purchase is something I'm actually trying to make happen by reviewing a phone, trying to give you all the details. But I also, as a reviewer, have to look at these phones from a broader market and context standpoint. And doing that reveals that Google and OnePlus are absolutely cooking right now. And if it was my money, I'd pick one of those instead. Be sure to hit like if you enjoyed today's video and subscribe to never miss another upload on this channel. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Ryan Thomas, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.